Welcome to the Perfect Life Awakening Show, hosted by Royce Morales. Royce has been a transformational facilitator, teaching groundbreaking, spiritually based courses for more than 4 decades. She is the author of 3 books about her teachings. Join Royce as she takes you on a journey into how to live your best life and find your true purpose through discovering the origins of subconscious, disempowering notions and releasing them. She talks with experts and inspiring people just like you who learned to trust their intuitive inner wisdom, which led to life-changing shifts. Today, her guests live an empowered existence and are helping change the world to a higher consciousness place based on truth and love. You deserve to awaken to, align with, and embody your true self and live a life filled with love. Transform yourself from triggered to empowered and create your perfect life. Here is your host, Royce Morales.
Hello, welcome to my show. Thank you so much for tuning in. And before I get started, I just have to say happy Juneteenth. What a very special day this is today. Very special. I'm so excited. A couple of things before we get started. I'm excited to let you guys know that I am now affiliated with Spiritual Awakenings International. And if anybody watching this has had any kind of spiritually transformative experience, whether it be a near-death experience or out of body or anything that falls into that category, reach out to these people because they're doing some amazing work. They have sharing circles and all kinds of informational lectures and events. So it's really wonderful. So today I am so excited. Also, I'm always excited to do my show. We're going to talk about sacred geometry. What is that? And are there universal patterns playing a role in the evolution of consciousness or playing a role in your life in some way? And I've invited a couple of experts about this, Greg and Gail Hoag, and they've written a book called Sacred Geometry, the Universal Language of Divine Alignment. And they're going to explain all that to you. And I just have to say, from the get-go, that I was a B+ student all through my schooling, except my geometry class. I'm sure you guys will get a laugh out of that. I failed my geometry class. And the interesting part about it is I took it in summer school and I got an A. So I was just a little slow when it came to understanding geometry, which I don't know if our audience had the same experience trying to understand it. It was so complex and my brain just wouldn't work in that way. And so I'm excited to hear how you got involved in this and what it's all about. So first of all, tell us, yes, how did this all come to be? How did you get involved in understanding this?
Well, thank you for having us on, Royce. It's a pleasure to be here. And I love your story about how you failed geometry in school, because we get a lot of people who tell us, oh, if geometry was taught the way you do it, I would have loved it.
Yes.
And I think that, when things are really abstract, instead of connected to something that we understand, something tangible and meaningful, then it gets a little dry and our minds wander off and it just doesn't all come in together. So, we really anchor this into something about our purpose, our conscious evolution, all kinds of things that I think you and your audience is extremely interested in.
Yes.
So, I'll tell you how I got into it. First of all, from the eyes of an artist, looking out at the world and wanting to understand the world, this beautiful creation. How does it happen? How does all of this magnificent physical world come together? So that was one part of it. And another part was when I was about 3 years old, I had this epiphany. And, a 3-year-old mind can't necessarily understand everything, but I just knew that I was here to make a difference. So something touched me that said, you wake up. You need to be aware of what's going on around, because things will happen. So that, and a near-death experience, and opening up to the work of Buckminster Fuller, who was an absolute genius. He's the one who created the geodesic dome. And when he talked about geometry and the tetrahedron and all kinds of things, it made sense to me, because he was trying to help me understand how energy flows, because everything's pure energy and it has to come in to this physical dimension in a particular way.
Yeah.
And so he helped me understand that. And so when he passed away in the early 80s, I had just gobbled up all of his books. I had actually had an opportunity to see him lecture once. And I was already in a place where I was channeling, connecting to higher consciousness. And I put it out and said, I would like to understand more of what you had to say. If you'd like to teach me more, I'm open. So in meditation, I saw, after several requests, that he came to me. I started getting all of these lessons that were getting more and more mathematical and scientific and all kinds of stuff that I did not have a background for. So I just said, look, either bring me somebody that I can do something with this about, because I'm a practical person, or just like slow it down. And within a couple of weeks, I met my husband. Well, who's now my husband, obviously, but that wasn't then. But we met, and he had this box of geometries that he had welded, and they were all these different tetrahedrons. And I asked him if he knew the work of Buckminster Fuller, and he said, "No, never heard of him." And I
Wow.
said, "You need to." So that's kind of my exploration into how I got here. And then Gregory's got a really interesting story as well. So I'm going to let him jump in now.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yes.
So I was carrying around this box of forms that I was building, but let's go back a few years to I graduated from college studying math and science, and then spent the decade of the 70s actually searching for higher knowledge through spirituality. And so I joined different ashrams, I worked with different spiritual masters. And then in 1980, I built a pyramid with a friend that in today's dollars would be close to $250,000 to build.
Wow.
And it was only 10 feet high, but it was so precise and we had such large crystals in it, etc., that when I was sleeping in it, it set off something called Kundalini,
Yeah.
which is a flow of energy from the earth that moves through all the chakras, literally shifting the frequency of the body so it can maintain a higher frequency and higher connection. It was so strong, the energy flowing through my body, that I literally had holes being burned in my hands and in
Wow.
my feet
Wow.
just from the energy flowing through. But after things started to calm down, which took a lot of work and a number of years, I started communicating with higher dimensional understanding. And that's what I was building. I didn't know anything about this phrase, sacred geometry. I only knew that there were patterns that exist prior to physical incarnation, prior to plants being grown. There's a pattern that exists prior to that, and to animals and to everything. And so those patterns, I started building them. And that's what I shared with Gail when I met her in the garage of a home that I'd recently sold. And we realized we had work to do together. And there was a lot of interplay with spirit in bringing us together and setting us on this path, which was 40 years ago now. that we've been working on sacred geometry.
Wow. Amazing story. Truly amazing. So give us a definition. What do you really mean by sacred geometry? Tell us about it.
Well, I'm going to start out in a more broad and simple way.
Good. Yes.
And then,
Good people. Yes.
yeah, and then Gregory can take you down. He'll drill down into more specifics. But basically, sacred geometry reveals to us how everything is created in very precise and specific patterns and rhythms and cycles. You know, everything starts out as energy, as vibration. So there has to be some way, some mechanism that things can come into creation, can create over and over again with the vast array of all that we have around us. And yet we're all connected. It's all based on these same principles. And the ancients understood this. So when they went about building sacred sites and temples and cathedrals and all kinds of things, that they wanted to create something that would help elevate people's consciousness, help them connect to that higher knowing. And so they would draw on these principles and build based on the way that nature creates itself. You know, when we go out into nature, we may have had a very stressed day. We could have been sitting in front of a computer, or who knows what was going on, where we felt disconnected. And yet when we go into a beautiful place in nature, we can breathe differently. We can allow our bodies and our consciousness to open up to what this realm is all about, what consciousness brings us. And so nature carries all of these patterns, and we see it in the flowers around us, in the way that rocks and trees and people and our molecules evolve. Everything is in very, very precise ways. And so that's sort of an overview of what this is. And the reason why it's so important is because it is who we are. So we're reconnecting to the essence of who we are.
Yeah. So just curious here, being conscious of this like you guys are, does it, and we'll get into more deeper understanding of it in a second, but it's coming to me that I've got to ask. I always find that sometimes when I'm really conscious of something, it kind of gets in the way in a weird way. You know, mindfulness, I think, is really important, but sometimes it turns into that mind chatter that gets in the way of really experiencing something. Do you find that happens at all with this?
You're mixing up, I think, what's going on a lower vibrational level with what we call ego, that is invested in this reality around us. And we often describe it that we're much like an iceberg in our makeup, where, like an iceberg, only 10% of us is seen in the physical dimension, shows up in the physical dimension, that we also exist in a much larger hidden dimensional realm. And that's where things like even our emotions exist around the body. This is part of what people see when they look at an aura, and they can see colors around a person that are reflective of their emotional state. And so when mind chatter is happening, this is something, I mean, we all experience it. We all, we make effort to meditate. The mind comes in and starts going, well, what do you have to do today? What happened here and there? And you simply let it go to the background and come back into your breath, into being present with who you are. And that kind of a space can allow you to expand. So I think your question was, in working with sacred geometry, what happens is that by following the patterns that have been created universally, that means we could go to the other side of the universe and communicate using number, pattern, rhythm, cycle, shapes, and they would be able to translate and transform information from one understanding to another. And also, that's sacred geometry. And sacred geometry is that geometry that we can build, that we can put in very small spaces or large, and it resonates with these same archetypical principles. The way the body's created, the way the moon's created, the earth and the moon, the way they dance together in certain diameters, for example. They create geometries. Light itself has a geometry that is at the basis of all energy. And when we bring those energies into our environment, they act like an antenna system that can collect and transmit an energy. And it's much like Gail was describing being in nature. One of the reasons nature works for us in terms of helping us relax and let go of stress and connect to something deeper is that everything is being what it's supposed to be doing. Pretty much a tree is taking in carbon dioxide, putting out oxygen. We sit under it and we feel the moisture, the oxygen, the life of the trees communicating with other trees and plants through its root system and even more. And so there's something going on with the way the natural world creates energy flow. And that's what our book is really about, how energy flows through harmonics, through matching up numbers. And when you have even different types of measures, like miles, the diameter of the moon is 2,160 miles, that has the same number of degrees as a cube, which is 2,160 degrees.
Wow.
And that has the same number of years as an astrological age. So we're just moving out of the age of Pisces, moving into the age of Aquarius, and that age is going to last 2,160 years.
Wow.
And what happens is we see this going on again and again and again across many different mediums where numbers and patterns have relationships. And what we think are separate, like time and the space of the cube and the diameter of the moon in miles, we actually see, again and again. The Earth, its diameter is equal to 4 of the platonic solids, exactly. And the diameter of the sun is equal to 3 of the platonic solids times 100. So there are relationships with these platonic solids, which there are 5 of them. For those of you who aren't familiar with them, cube is one of them. They all have regular faces, regular angles, and there are only 5 that exist like this. And what happens is they have relationships to the way we're created in our bodies, the way the DNA is created. So much can be related to the patterns in nature. And the thing is, if this is the way nature is doing it, what's happening with our technology today, we are bringing in a lot of artificial frequencies. That's what the electromagnetic frequencies are. We're bringing in a lot of artificial substances, the forever plastics, the different kinds of toxins that are in our environment. And then the fears going on the planet, that when I was talking about the emotional body being around our physical body in this higher realm, that's where the fears hang out. And that fear that we have of what didn't work out yesterday, of what happened when I was a child, or what's going to happen when my boss walks in tomorrow, all those kinds of things separate us from the fullness of who we are. And by working with sacred geometric principles that can bring in a resonance that's more natural, we can start to go past the fear, the toxins, the electromagnetic blockages, the judgments, the stress that goes on, and the belief systems. All of these things keep us small at the tip of the iceberg when it's possible to be a much more full, expanded, conscious human being. And that's where mindfulness comes in, when we're operating from a larger field of awareness, that the mind chatter that exists in the smaller part of ourselves can be separated out, and we can literally look back at it and not let it bother us as much when we're coming from that expanded space of awareness.
Yeah. So that's, you've just stated exactly the work that I do with taking people back to remember and release and neutralize some of the stuff that is impacting their lives, whether it be fear, beliefs, expectations, you name it. That's the work that I do. So how does your sacred geometry do that kind of work with people? What exactly happens with that?
Well, that's a wonderful question, Royce. And the basic thing that our tools do, we've been creating different tools based on sacred geometric principles for nearly 40 years. And what they're really about is helping us maintain the essential connection to who we are at those higher levels, so that while we're doing our work, while we're in relationship, while we're just, in our everyday life, we don't have to be so distracted by all these other things around us. Instead, we can be more centered into who we are more fully. So, one of the things that I love about, like, I wear this pendant that you might see around my neck, and it's based on all these different sacred geometries. And inside, there's different antenna systems, and it's set in a geometric chamber that we have here on our land in Colorado. And, the first thing that I noticed when I started wearing it was I used to procrastinate all the time, and I stopped procrastinating. It wasn't like I even told myself I want to stop procrastinating. What happened was that my consciousness stayed more connected to my purpose. I started noticing that even though I've always been an intuitive person, my intuitive capabilities just took off. So those connections were nurturing me. They were fueling me to be able to experience the different levels of who I am, more of my creativity, more of my ability to not just be driven by my ego, but allowing myself to be who I am at all of these different levels. And it's kind of like, I'm going to go back to the analogy of nature again. When we're in these natural places, we feel more of who we are here to be. And, even like, you can go back in the story about Albert Einstein, when his theory of relativity came to him, was when he was out for a walk in nature. Things come to us. We have a different awareness. we allow ourselves to recognize whatever else is going on at different levels, and we're not so distracted. One of the things that is very interesting about EMFs, a lot of people have concerns about 5G, EMF, all that sort of thing. And they'll say, well, does your work block EMFs? Well, no, you can't block EMFs. If you did that, then our computers and all this other stuff wouldn't work. But what you can do, which is more powerful and which isn't about the fear of it, is strengthen connection. When you are strong within all those connections, then you're tapping in to the vast network of who you are.
Yeah.
And that's truly what this world of sacred geometry offers to us.
Well, we need to take a bit of a break. So just to tell everybody, I'm talking with Gail and Greg Hoag about sacred geometry, and we will be right back.
Home Times TV. Do you crave joy but feel stuck? Do you go through life feeling constantly triggered and frustrated? Fear is likely the culprit, and subconscious fear is likely sabotaging you. Perfect Life Awakening is a time-tested, spiritually based approach to inner transformation created by Royce Morales. For over 40 years, she has helped people get to the origins of subconscious fears and ultimately help them find their true purpose and a life full of joy. Sign up for Perfect Life Awakening today at roycemorales.com. You deserve to go from triggered to empowered, shifting your life with Perfect Life Awakening. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
I want to eat apples and bananas. I need to eat apples and bananas. Why can't I eat apples and bananas?
Support the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks to help provide meals to those in need. Join us at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome back. I'm talking with Gail and Gregory Hoag about sacred geometry. I'm finding my head is spinning with all of this. It's just so exciting, though. So you talk about tools and you talk about the pendant that you're wearing and the pyramids and all those wonderful symbols that I'm seeing behind you. Tell us a little bit about that. How does that work?
So when you were asking us before about how does it fit in, it's like it fits in so well with your teaching, because what we're talking about are tools and they can be very empowering. And it's just like if I were to give you a hammer, you might build a house, or you might crack a walnut, or you might even hit your thumb, but it's not the hammer's fault. But when you're done building the house, you built the house, not the hammer. And what happens with the tools that we're building is we're creating a space where knowledge can be transferred more easily. People can get it more easily. It shifts the frequency of the body in such a way that you're operating at a higher vibrational level. And this is proven again and again by just anecdotal situations, let alone we do a lot of measuring and a lot of testing. But things like a grandmother who said that when wearing this pendant, that what she loved about it is her grandkids don't run away from her anymore.
Wow.
They crawl all over her once she started wearing it. And a prison guard said, I love it because the prisoners treat me much better. They're nicer to me.
Interesting.
We've had these kinds of forums like you see sitting next to me where they're in a lawyer's office on their conference table. And they said when they run this, people argue less.
Huh.
They get it more easily. They understand things. It affects people's intuition, their ability to be present, their ability just to feel good. Because so many of the things going on around us, when we talk about the environment with the computers and the cell phones, we don't realize there are subtle things going on with our body where sometimes we're not taking in as much oxygen. We're not being as present. We're sometimes a little more irritated and we look around for the problem. And if you're the person sitting next to me, I look at you and go, you must be the problem for me. That's why I'm not feeling good. And we don't realize that it's so much of this field that we're in that if we can shift that field, and that's what happens with a geometry that's acting like an antenna system, and it's actually vibrating in the same way that the body was created. And so I have slides and pictures. If you wanted me to bring any of them in, I'd be happy to do that and show you some of the things that I'm talking about.
Yeah. I'm hoping that we can do that. Let me quickly ask our engineer, are they allowed to show some slides? Can we
No, I could just simply go like
there
this,
we go. Good job.
and
Those
I
are
am there. So he doesn't have to be involved in that way.
okay. It is mirrored. So I don't know if you
It is mirrored.
yeah,
Okay, well, let's go to something without words right
here we
now.
go.
You see, when I said the human body, it's like these dimensions right here, the hand to the elbow on that side of the picture, when you have the backwards A and the backwards B, one divided into the other, you get this same ratio,
Yeah.
1.618, called the phi ratio. And the body, the head to the navel to the feet, that's what was made famous by Leonardo's
Yeah.
Vitruvian Man.
Yeah.
And all of these dimensions, they even go down to the DNA within the body. Now, when you work with something like, where is it? The diameter of the moon plus the diameter of the earth in miles gives us 10,080 degrees, which is this geometry on the right. And that geometry is what is sitting next to me right here. And that geometry is also working with that same phi ratio that we showed you with the human being.
Wow.
This is a caliper that measures those ratios. And if I look at my middle finger, the first digit to the whole finger, the finger to the hand to the elbow, this is how we're constructed. And it's the way the diameter of the moon and the diameter of the earth work together with certain dimensional numbers that also transform into a dimensional form that works in so many degrees, that has a relationship to the way life builds itself, the way plants grow, the way insects form, the way animals are constructed. I mean, we all follow these patterns. So when, just like being in nature, we can bring a field, actually the archetypical underlying, the archetypical design underlying nature is there in our environment when we bring these geometries and we spin them at certain speeds because that's working with time. And we see all of these different dimensions and numbers. For example, I mean, I could go on and just looking at the number of seconds in a week that gives us certain geometries.
Really?
And on, how there are relationships and patterns that when we follow them, it's like going with the flow of the river rather than fighting it. We're going with the way nature has been created, the way that life works. And so we can still do all the other things we're doing because we need the vehicles, we need, the computers and what's going on, the way we've constructed our lives. But we can balance personally, physiologically, what's going on with our bodies by bringing in some of these more natural elements, which help us in clearly understanding more, expanding to a higher state of consciousness, so that when you share your information, people can go, oh, that makes sense. I can feel it in my body. It just makes everything go so much easier when we're playing with a full deck of who we are and expanding ourselves and coming from a place where, we don't have to take the problems that go on in our lives so personally. We get so caught up in all the daily routines, and this little character is, just dancing through it, but he doesn't have to be taking it all so personally and be able to see the bigger picture that allows him to be present and give people the space to be who they are without letting it hurt me
Yeah.
mentally, emotionally, and physically.
So I've done tremendous 40 years of research on this. Are, and I'm not saying this in any way to discount what you guys have done. It's amazing. But are there places that scientifically test all of this? I mean, you've given anecdotal examples, but what about the science? And I'm definitely not scientifically minded, so I don't know why I'm asking this, but I'm trusting it. But do you have scientific evidence of this in some way?
Absolutely.
Good.
We've had doctors work with it, and Dr. Lisa Tully did experiments with people where she tested their energy fields, before and after, doing double blind tests with some of these small pieces, like, pieces that we're wearing, that they could test what's going on with an energy field, test what's going on with cognitive ability. We've done things with EEG, measuring brainwave frequencies. And it's amazing that we could have an empty box or a box with geometry inside. And when it's brought into someone's presence, you can't shift it any other way. It's amazing to watch people's brainwaves immediately shift, where they could be in a deeper state of theta and delta, which normally is associated with more of deep sleep and more of an unconscious state, but they can be fully conscious, communicating. And I had one researcher tell me that when I was meditating with this pendant, that the way they were watching my brainwaves work, she said, I've only seen this one other place, and that's where there was this yogi who was putting needles through his tongue without drawing blood,
Wow.
and putting needles through the flesh of his neck. Somehow he rearranged his brainwave state. I'm not going to try this with a needle on my body. Let him do that.
Yeah.
But it's nice to know that I can shift my brainwave state to be one that where things are firing, it's not so much in, that reptilian part of our brain, the part that's working with fight or flight or fear, but it's working in other aspects of the brain that are a much larger, more inclusive part that allows for more information to come in. So we have been, over the last 40 years, going through this again and again, and having tens of thousands of people experience our products and giving us feedback. So, as well as the doctors that have included it in some of their practices, and chiropractic and MD, and a number of people that are experimenting with all types of new research and ways of working with the human body and the brain.
Yeah. Fascinating. So another question just comes to mind. I'm one of these people, I'm an artist also, Gail, and that was kind of my start in understanding myself and understanding energy. And I found that I could never do anything or own anything that had triangles or squares. Everything has to be round and soft and, hearts and all of that stuff. Is there anything that you have noticed about certain shapes that people are drawn to or repelled by? Is there anything about that?
That's an interesting question. Even the structures that we have that look like, that have hard edges,
Yeah.
it's almost like, when you build a house, you have hard edges inside, but then you can bring the softness outside of it. So, definitely there are people who will be attracted more to certain shapes and certain flows of energy. And yet, I think that it's so related that, it's not as if this would all put you off if it weren't, the more feminine energies. But it's interesting that in the last couple of years, we get a lot of guidance for the work that we do. And we're always asking what's next. And in the last, maybe 3 or 4 years, we've become more aware that it is important for us to create some shapes that have spherical bandings. And, even like this shape over here behind me, it has in its geometry, it's got more angular structural integrity. But the way this flows now is just with these spherical bands. So having these, there's another form that we have now that's called the divine integrator. And that's a powerful form that helps us work through those spherical energies, because, everything flows in terms of spirals. So when we look at that, we relate to it more. And those energies are helping the feminine energy bring itself more into our culture again, which is extremely important. It's interesting that there are people that will see different shapes that we make and say, whoa, I just saw that in a dream or a meditation.
Yeah.
So different people are attracted to different kinds of shapes, geometries, whatever. And certainly this is an important aspect of working with that feminine flow of the energy.
Could it be that that's what they need in some way?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Sure. Sure. We should always trust what we resonate with, what feels right to us, what we're attracted to.
Yeah. Interesting. So
Mhm.
tell us, you make reference to products and things that you guys do. Tell us a little bit about what's available from you.
Okay. Well, we have pendants, and I think Gregory's going to show you a picture of the pendants, and that's what both Gregory and I are wearing. And so on the surface, we have all these different geometries. And it's interesting, you were talking about the spherical shapes, and you'll see that there are different combinations of both the angularity and the spherical shapes on these pendants. And this new this pendant is something that we've just started producing in the last couple years, because we wanted to bring in that feminine energy of the divine integrator and different spherical forms. So you'll see that in there. And what's interesting is that inside is what you don't see. This is actually one pendant that has a front and a back. And inside are many different antenna systems and different compositions of rare earth materials and gems and spiraled materials that we've created. Everything that we do is handmade. And we have people that work for us that are just really beautiful, conscious people. And they make everything in just a very loving and conscious way. And so that's one thing. It's probably our most popular product, because we are bringing together so many of these different geometric products and putting them into something that you can wear. And again, the most important thing is we want things to help us remain connected so that we can be more of who we are in every minute of the day. And then we have different geometries from something that we call the 5G solution. That is an amazing geometry that, well, my story on it is that 14 years ago, we had a massive flood here in Colorado where we live, knocked out all of the electricity. We didn't have any cell phone service because we're in a rural area where we didn't have it. And everything was so quiet. It was like that pristine, beautiful energy. And I got used to that because we had maybe like over a month of being in that kind of space. And when the electricity got turned on again, I mean, as much as we wanted it, it was, it was prickly, it was really offensive. So when we turned on this 5G solution, because it rotates, and when we put it together and set it up, it just dawned on me that this is what it felt like when we had that time where we were free of those electromagnetics. The wiring in the walls wasn't going off. We weren't in front of computers and cell phones and all of that jazz. And it felt wonderful.
Yes.
So, it isn't, again, it's not about blocking things. We're really working on how we strengthen our connections.
Yes.
When
Yes.
those connections are strong, then wonderful things happen.
So in the last minute that we have, tell people how to get in touch with you and how to find your products and your books.
Great. Our website is iconnecttoall.com.
Oh, that's great.
And can you see that properly now?
No, it's still reversed.
Okay.
So we'll stay away from that.
It's the letter I, the word connect, the number 2, the word all.com. And if you put /chapter at the end, then we're offering a free chapter of our book, the first chapter, which is What is Consciousness? Wonderful. So we invite everyone to take that opportunity to check that out. And on our website, you can learn more about our products. We have lots of videos, all kinds of information that we'd love to share with you.
Thank you so much. This was fascinating. I'm going to go retake my geometry class in high school.
Good.
Maybe get an A+ this time. But thank you so much, Gail and Greg Hoag. And this was amazing. And just to let everybody know that I'm constantly starting new classes. So reach out to me at roycemorales.com or perfectlifeawakening.com. I'm also giving away free ebooks. So check it out on my website and get yourself a free ebook that explains what I do. And it's a great, wonderful tool to have to really help you in life. And I will see all of you in a couple of weeks. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you.
Thank you, and blessings.
Blessings.